Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap up, the WNW 220 for December 18th, 2015. And, well, the Fed has finally done it. Yep, lift off on the front page of the business section of USA Today. This is on the front page of the newspaper, front page on a lot of pages. After 10 years, they finally raised interest rates a quarter of a point on a key rate, a quarter point on the Fed funds rate, the overnight rate that banks charge each other for the use of money. But the real story is how the mainstream media bought the phony recovery story hook, line, and sinker, propelled by the Fed. I mean, not a single hard question to the Fed. But remember that reporter, what's his name, DaCosta, who asked Janet Yellen about how she got an investigation killed, where some information leaked out, and a lot of bankers made some money, a lot of Wall Street guys made some money. He was a reporter at the Wall Street Journal, and after peppering Janet Yellen for, hey, did you get this investigation killed? Poof, he's gone. So I guess all the reporters got the message from the mainstream media. Don't ask the Fed any hard questions. It's a completely phony recovery, and the data says so. But the only thing that the USA Today put on the front page of its paper, let me find it right here, get it right in there for you. Read that headline, focus. There you go. Housing construction up 16.5% in November. Of course, John Williams at shadowstats.com says housing is headed for a contraction if you look at the entire fourth quarter. And I can't tell you that how bad the data points have been. You've seen here week after week. I've read these headlines. I mean, manufacturing's terrible. Retail would be lucky if it's flat. We had a horrible Black Monday. We have the labor participation rate at something like 95 million people in a country of 320 million people. Oil is in the tank. There's a glut. It's $38 a barrel. All the data points are screaming that we're in a recession already. And here's another big one. And this came out just a couple of days before the Fed came out and said, the economic recovery has come a long way. That's Fed head Janet Yellen. The economic recovery has come a long way, she says. It's a fragile recovery. No, it's a phony recovery. It's no recovery at all. It's a recovery on Main Street, but not a recovery on Wall Street, but not Main Street. Here we have a shipping index. This is a Bloomberg headline, folks. This came out a couple of days before the Fed raised rates a quarter of a point and said it was because the economy was, getting stronger. Shipping index plunges to fresh record amid China steel slump. Talking about the Baltic Dry Index, which is an index of dry goods moved around the world. Not oil. As I've told you, oil's tanking. The Baltic Dry Index is at record lows. It was the Baltic Dry Index was started in 1985. It's the lowest it's ever been since 1985. And the Fed thinks that we have some sort of recovery, that this recovery has come a long way. If you call it that much a long way, I guess it's a long way. It's a recovery for Wall Street. And then you have on the day of the announcement, of course, I'm sure it's not manipulated, you have a 250-point pop. And then the very next day, you have a 250-point drop. Uh-oh. You have a real rate hike, folks. Going into the most leveraged global economy in history. That is pure fact. That's not fear porn. That's fact porn. We have increased the debt in the world by, I've heard estimates anywhere from 57 to 70 trillion, while we grew the GDP at somewhere between 10 and 15 trillion. We're more leveraged now than in the 2008, just before the 2008 meltdown, and they're raising rates, the Federal Reserve. A real rate increase, meaning a fantasy, phony recovery. What could go wrong? I have Egon von Greyerz on from Matterhorn Asset Management. He is the founder of that company. He has gold vaults in Switzerland and also in Asia. And he's going to come on and open your eyes about what he thinks about the rate hike and how many rate hikes he thinks that we'll have in the future. Egon von Greyerz will be on Sunday on the early Sunday release. And speaking of sucking money out of the economy, Here is the huge policy lie. It's the biggest policy lie in history. Thank you, Jonathan Gruber from MIT, the professor at MIT, who helped craft this huge lie with Democratic leadership all the way up to the White House. Look at the jumps we're going to have in healthcare cost, anywhere from 8 to 35%. A couple of states, healthcare cost went down. That's a couple. Most states are going to have anywhere between 8% all the way up to Alaska is 35.6%. But a lot of 30%ers, a lot of 15, 20%. I mean, most states' healthcare prices are going up, not down. All those states that have some color, all those states, healthcare prices going up. This is according to USA Today. That's going to suck money out of the economy. The big lie, it's going to be cheaper. Nope, no, it's not. That's a huge lie. That is a huge lie. Costs are going up. These exchanges are going bankrupt. But in the budget, speaking of Obamacare got fully funded. Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, a new Speaker of the House, came out with a budget, and President Obama has exclaimed publicly that he's beaten the Republicans on the budget, and basically he got everything he wanted. He got funding for Obamacare. He got funding for his illegal immigration plan, which kind of makes him legal. He got funding for Planned Parenthood that we saw been chopping up babies and selling their parts. That's okay. That's pro-choice. That's let's call it something it's not. Pro-choice. No, not pro-abortion after 57 million abortions, where they're chopping up babies and selling body parts of the babies, and mainstream media refuses to cover that story. They refuse to cover it. And the lie of, these videos are heavily edited, even though the Center for Medical Progress, the guys that did the videos, put the videos on in their entirety on their website, on their YouTube channel. You can see the videos in their entirety uncut. President Obama got money for his climate initiative, that the Republicans hate. So at the very least, a big sellout. But it may be something more than that. I mean, Rush Limbaugh says the Republican Party ought to be disbanded, and that the leadership sold out the Republican voters, and this is why Trump is doing so well, because, the leadership ain't getting it. It's just really one party. I mean, you have Pelosi and Boehner, when he was Speaker of the House, voting the same way on the NSA spying, and really it's then you have Boehner, making deals with the Democrats to pass legislation. Then you have the Republicans, making deals with the Democrats for the PPT, the Pacific Partnership. That crazy thing where they sell out America and lay off, American workers. But it could be something, this budget deal with Paul Ryan, who's the new Speaker of the House, it could be something more ominous. And maybe the leadership in the Republican Party knows all too well that this is going to crash. They know it's going to crash. It doesn't make any difference. It really doesn't make any difference. Even if we spend an extra $500 billion that this budget has in it, it has to make it through the House and the Senate and all that. But the Republican leadership knows it's going to blow up, and when it does, they can say, well, Mr. President, we gave you everything you wanted. This is your fault. This is what you wanted. We gave you what you wanted. This economy blowing up is your fault. I mean, I would hate to think that's the kind of leadership we have, but either they're selling us out or they know it's going to blow up and they don't care. One or the other, they're not doing what they need to do for the American people. It's unbelievable. Meanwhile, this used plumbing truck right here, you see this? Mark 1 Plumbing. Mark 1 Plumbing from Houston, Texas. The guys traded in a truck. They asked the dealer now you're gonna get rid of this decal, right? Sure, before you wholesale it. Oh, sure, yeah. Well, they don't. They wholesale the truck back in 2013. It gets bought and shipped to Turkey, and not long after that, it was converted into a military vehicle with this bad mamma jamma machine gun on it. And there's Mark 1 Plumbing that has a phone number down there, which I don't want to show you too much of. Mark 1 Plumbing alleges in a lawsuit with the dealer that, hey, this ends up at ISIS. You were supposed to remove my decal, and I'm getting all these hateful, threatening calls about my truck being in the hands of ISIS. And these folks in Houston, this Mark 1 Plumbing Company, of course, had no idea that their trade-in would end up with an ISIS machine gun mounted on it after being shipped to Turkey, and then Turkey sends it down to Syria so ISIS can modify it so it can kill some more people. I mean, folks, this is alleged in a law. You know how I am about sourcing. I hate, stating my opinion as fact. I will try not ever to do that. When I say this is my opinion, it's my opinion. But this is a fact in a lawsuit. This truck, wholesale in 2013, left Houston, ended up in a port in Turkey. Not long after that, it ends up in a picture with an ISIS machine gun on it. And this Mark I Plumbing is suing the dealer for $1 million because they were damaged. And I can see how they were damaged. I mean, they look like they're terrorists, and they are not. There is no way this Houston Plumbing Company knew anything about this. Likely the dealer didn't know anything about it either, but was reckless to send it. But the idea here is that here we have, once again, this is the important point, this thing gets shipped into Turkey, and then it gets shipped down to ISIS and retrofitted with a machine gun on it. It's an F-250, so it's heavy enough to hold it. So it gets retrofitted with a machine gun, and here we have the Turkey-ISIS connection. Turkey, a NATO country. The U.S. knowing full well, we learned from our CIA source, Scott Eulinger, saying we told them that they were selling oil, the ISIS. Of course, the CIA has their sins too. They armed. Even Eulinger said, hey, they probably armed people they shouldn't have armed. Yeah, like ISIS, like Al-Qaeda. That's the problem. What kind of a foreign policy is this? Clearly, the U.S. knows that ISIS is being funded by our allies. Clearly, the U.S. knows that the weapons that we are sending to the moderate rebels are ending up in the hands of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. It's fact. It's fact. What kind of a foreign policy are we running? I mean, if we don't have World War III, I'll be shocked if we don't have World War III. And obviously, the State Department realizes this because John Kerry and the State Department just backed way off on this idea that they're going to remove Assad if we're going to have peace in Syria. Well, Russia and Iran have drawn a line in the sand. They say Assad stays. Guess what? John Kerry agreed that he's staying. Assad, Bashar al-Assad, is staying in Syria. I mean, talk about humiliation. John Kerry was the architect of the Iran deal, which I told you has not been signed, will not be signed, according to the State Department. Not a deal. And here he is tucking his tail between his legs once again and saying, yeah, well, eventually we want him to, be removed. And I'm sure Iran and Turkey saying, yeah, right, Assad's going to be removed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. So Iran and Turkey has drawn, Iran and Russia, I should say, had drawn a line in the sand, and the Obama administration backed off again. And that also, the U.S. is recalling those, 12 F-15s that landed in Turkey about, beginning of November? And now they're taking them back. Might be because Turkey almost started a world war by shooting down a Russian plane, and also their people they support in Syria, the terrorists that they support, murdered one of the Russian pilots while he was parachuting down. Russia has since installed their ultra-modern S-400 missile system. It can shoot down an aircraft or whatever flying at 2,800 miles per hour. That's Mach 8. 8 times the speed of sound. It could shoot it down 10 miles high. You think that might be the reason why the U.S. removed their F-15s from Turkey? Putin has also dared Turkey to fly into Syrian airspace. And if Russia did venture into Turkey's airspace, it was only for a few seconds. I mean, so things are not cooling off in the Middle East, and they're getting worse. And as I said, after this Iran deal, that things would ratchet up in the Middle East, and sure enough, they are. This is far, far from over, ladies and gentlemen. Next up, we have this little tidbit story here, and this is the writer here. Trump is my little boy's boogeyman. This is a USA Today story. And it was written by this woman right here, Shaheen Pasha. She's a Muslim. And she's talking about her little boy. Trump is my little boy's boogeyman. She teaches journalism, believe it or not, at the University of Massachusetts. And she teaches journalism, and maybe she should take a class on being objective and unbiased. Because also USA Today, which is nothing more than a Democratic spin machine. And if you look here closely, they don't mark this as op-ed. I'll get it. Let me give you good. Special for you. Special. This is an op-ed piece. But they pass it off as some sort of a news story. Trump is my little boy's boogeyman. And what Shaheen Pasha says is, Trump said that he wants to ban Muslims temporarily because we do have all this Islamic terrorism at mosques, according to the FBI, at least 10% of the 2,000 mosques, and also other studies that show anywhere from, 50 to 80% of the mosques teach violent jihad or hand out information on it. But she says that, her little boy asked if he was going to be deported, and this is the premise of her story. Trump is my little boy's boogeyman. Of course, the writer here, Shaheen Pasha, leaves out the fact that Trump said that because 14 people were murdered and 22 were shot by Islamic radical terrorists in San Bernardino. Of course, if she would have mentioned that, that it'd be an awful hard case to prove that, or to propel that Trump's a boogeyman, but not the two people that murdered 14 and shot 22. Really? Trump's the boogeyman? Not the Islamic radical terrorist that murdered 14 and shot 22? This is the spin that they try to pass off as news in the USA Today, and this so-called journalist should be ashamed of herself. This is spin, and this is thought shaping, and anything they could do to trash Trump because I think Trump beats Hillary in a head-to-head competition. And I also think that Trump, will probably win the nomination if it's not rigged. Another thing in the debates, with Trump and Jeb Bush. And Trump says something like, Jeb Bush says, we're not going to be president. He goes, oh, I'm not. I'm 42 and you're 3%. And Jeb Bush says, it doesn't make any difference. You won't be president. Did you get that? Jeb Bush, whose dad was the former president, former head of the CIA, doesn't make any difference. You won't be president. Is that spoken like nana nana poo poo, or is that spoken like, I know, my sources say you will not be president? I don't know. That was a creepy little exchange, but that flew all over. That flew right past, or at least nobody wanted to bring it up. He said, it doesn't make any difference. Remember, I'm 42, you're 3%. Doesn't make any difference. Jeb Bush says, you're not going to be president. Does Jeb Bush have information? I mean, think about it. When your dad's former president of the United States and former CIA director, your inside information is a lot better than, Donald Trump's or just about anybody else in the world. Thank you so much for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments and donations. That helps us out. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter. Remember, fear not. Prepare yourself mentally, physically, and above all, spiritually. Fear not. God the Father is in charge.